TrueStory Vibes warmly welcomes all our beloved listeners. We're so glad to see you again in our familiar time slot.
Today,
TrueStory Vibes brings you a brand new story, one that we hope will touch your heart and stay with you. As you listen, feel free to leave a comment sharing the quote or moment that left the deepest impression on you. Wishing you a wonderful and meaningful listening experience. Aria Lennox stepped out of the battered white van and into the humid Kentucky morning, the early sun slicing through mist like a spotlight on her mission. She was 28, fiercely determined, and resolutely single until today. Before her, the creaking porch of Mrs. Hawthorne's clapboard farmhouse leaned at a worrying angle, every board pleading for repair. Aria inhaled the scent of damp earth and wildflowers, squared her shoulders, and strode forward, toolbox in hand. From the corner of her eye, she noticed Kai Winterbourne approaching, moving with the careful grace of someone accustomed to both heavy lifting and genuine kindness. He was 30, tall and lean, with tawny hair that caught the sunlight, and eyes so calm they reminded her of a still lake. He offered her a small, polite nod, no swagger, no overconfidence, just a simple acknowledgement that they were partners today. "Morning," Kai said, voice low and surprisingly warm. His Kentucky drawl was soft, like molasses, and for a moment Aria's heart lurched off beat. "Morning," she returned, sliding open the rusty gate. "Let's see what we've got." They climbed onto the porch side by side. Mrs. Hawthorne, a frail woman with a mane of silver hair, watched them from her rocking chair. Aria caught the old woman's relieved sigh. "I don't know what I'd do without you young folks," she croaked. Kai flashed a gentle smile. "We've got this, ma'am." They split tasks. Aria steadied the lattice work, while Kai hauled planks from the truck. His broad shoulders flexed with each lift, but he never rushed. When he noticed Aria wobble on a loose board, he dropped the plank, caught her elbow, and steadied her without hesitation. "Thanks," she said, flushing. He nodded, then kept his hand there, a silent promise of support. As the morning wore on, thunder rumbled in the distance. A sudden downpour exploded around them. Aria scrabbled for her hat, but Kai dropped everything and offered her his jacket, thrusting it into her hands with a shy grin. "Here, stay dry." They crouched under the small overhang, tools forgotten. Rain spattered off Kai's jacket, drumming a steady rhythm. Aria felt her pulse accelerate, her breath catching in her throat. "Nice of you," she managed. He shrugged, eyes steady on hers. "Wouldn't leave you soaked." Lightning flickered, and Aria laughed, a startled, delighted sound. It was impossibly intimate, that moment between storm and shelter. Kai laughed too, and suddenly the porch felt less like work and more like the threshold of something unexpected. By noon, the storm had passed, and they returned to the boards, hands moving in unison. Aria measuring, Kai sawing, dust and sweat mingling on their skin. They fell into an easy rhythm, two halves of a whole. Every time Aria glanced at Kai, she saw him catch her gaze, then look away with a small, content smile. They finished in the afternoon light. Mrs. Hawthorne beamed at her sturdy new porch. "You two are angels," she exclaimed, pressing cookies into their hands. Aria and Kai exchanged triumphant looks, each holding a sticky peanut butter oatmeal. As they packed up, Aria caught Kai's eye again. "Thanks for everything today." He paused, his hand resting briefly on the toolbox. "I had fun. Hope to see you at the community lunch?" She hesitated. Her plans had been solitary until now, but she found herself nodding. "I'll be there." He smiled, real, hopeful.
great.
"See you then, Aria." Aria watched him walk away across the lawn, sunshine glinting on wet grass. Her heartbeat slowed to a calm thrum, and she realized something had shifted. Today was never supposed to be anything more than volunteer work. Yet under that Kentucky sky, with a stormy surprise and a thoughtful stranger, Aria Lennox had discovered a spark she couldn't ignore. And she couldn't wait until lunch. The next morning, Aria arrived at the town hall's community luncheon 45 minutes early, brushing flour from her jeans and worrying she'd misread Kai's invitation. The long folding tables were already abuzz with neighbors sharing fried chicken and coleslaw, but Aria only had eyes for the pale green jacket hanging on the back of a chair. Kai slipped into it as she approached, offering her a shy half-smile that sent a thrilling jolt through her. "Thought you might need this," he said, motioning toward the jacket. "Morning dew makes these benches a bit damp." Before she could answer, the mayor called everyone to the head table. Aria and Kai sat side by side, passing plates and trading bites of bakery fresh biscuits. Every time their hands brushed across the table, warmth spread from Aria's fingertips up her arm. She caught Kai watching her quietly and found herself smiling, even as her cheeks warmed. After lunch, the volunteer teams reorganized to repaint the community center's back wall. Aria hoisted the ladder while Kai held cans of pastel mint paint. They worked in tandem, one steadying the ladder, the other rolling paint with smooth, wide strokes. Tiny splatters dotted Aria's hair and Kai's shirt, and she laughed when a bright green speck landed on his cheek. "Right between the eye," she teased, dabbing at it with her finger. Kai leaned in with mock severity. "That's where all the love resides," he replied, making Aria laugh again. She realized she could stay like this, laughing and breathing the same air, with Kai forever. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, painting the sky in cotton candy pinks, Kai suggested they grab coffee at Ember Cafe. It was a small brick place around the corner, with strings of Edison bulbs and velvety lattes. Aria agreed, brushing stray paint flecks from her hair. Together they walked down Main Street, treading over scattered brushstrokes left by other volunteers. Inside Ember, the barista greeted them by name, evidence he'd asked Kai earlier. Aria ordered a lavender latte. Kai chose a honey cinnamon brew. They settled into a dimly lit corner, each cradling their mug. "So," Kai began, stirring foam, "thanks for jumping in yesterday. You make a great paint partner."
Aria sipped lazily.
The lavender foam danced on her tongue. "You weren't so bad at holding the ladder," she countered. "I felt completely safe." He laughed softly. "Good to know. I take my ladder duties seriously." They fell into easy conversation, favorite movies, guilty pleasure songs, childhood memories of summer days on their grandparents' farms. Aria learned that Kai grew up in Louisville and had a secret weakness for old-school jazz records. Kai discovered Aria's lifelong goal of opening a cruelty-free bakery, complete with kindness on every crust painted above the counter. It was only when the sun finally set and the cafe began to close that Aria realized how many hours had passed. She glanced at her watch. "Wow, we've been talking forever." Kai looked at her, eyes shining in the low light. "Time flies when you're having fun," he said. He offered his coat, which she accepted without hesitation. Outside, the chill had deepened, but Aria felt a cozy glow as they walked back to their cars. They paused under a row of oak trees, their leaves whispering in the breeze. "Would it be weird if I asked you out on a real date?" Kai ventured, voice low but earnest. Aria caught her breath. "I'd love that," she replied, surprising herself with how natural those words felt. She meant it. Over the next few weeks, Aria and Kai fell into a comfortable rhythm of weekend adventures. On Saturday, they hiked the winding trails of Red Rocks Park, climbing rocky ledges to watch the sun blaze across the canyon below. Kai carried extra water. Aria packed crunchy granola bars with fresh berries. They paused at a ledge high above the valley floor, breathing in the scent of juniper and pine. On Sunday, they explored Portland's art scene, stopping at local galleries to admire abstract canvases, peering into neon-lit tattoo shops, and sketching strangers on sidewalks with charcoal borrowed from a traveling art cart. Aria was amazed how Kai could mimic a pose in a single flick of his wrist. She laughed when he drew her with a crown of sunflowers, and he laughed when she sketched him holding an enormous paintbrush. As spring edges toward summer, Aria's bakery dreams gained momentum. Kai became her unofficial taste tester and business strategist. He spent evenings helping her test recipes, maple chai swirl buns, gluten-free scones studded with strawberries. Aria watched him take the first bite of each new creation, his eyes closing in pleasure, and felt a warmth deeper than any oven could produce. By the time they celebrated Aria's birthday at the rooftop bar above Kindred Spirits, their closeness was undeniable. Under strings of lanterns, Kai presented a small, handcrafted wooden box. Inside lay a single antique key. "This is for your future bakery," he said. "I found it in an old shop. I want to help make your dream a reality, if you'll let me." Tears touched Aria's lashes. She held his hand, pressing the key between their palms. "Storms brought us together," she whispered, "but I think our real adventure starts now." Kai smiled, leaning in for a gentle kiss. Soft as a summer breeze. Below them, the city lights blinked awake. In that moment, Aria knew their partnership had deepened into something rare and enduring, a romance that, like their volunteer project, would stand the tests of time and weather any storm. Aria and Kai settled into a rhythm so effortless that neither of them could remember exactly when S became their default setting. In the early mornings, they would pile into Kai's aging Subaru and head out to Smith Rock State Park, long before the world stirred. Aria would hand Kai a steaming thermos of cardamom chai while he tucked granola bars into her pack. They drove in comfortable silence, punctuated by the soft hum of radio jazz and the occasional sighting of deer grazing by the roadside. By the time they reached the winding trailhead, the first blush of dawn was painting the canyon walls. Together, they hiked until the sun peaked above the rim, trading the hush of broken sky for the gentle warmth of day. Kai let Aria lean against his shoulder as they sipped tea and watched the crooked river carve its way through basalt cliffs, and she felt that every sunrise tasted sweeter shared with him. Back in Portland, their weekends took on a creative energy that threaded through every aspect of their lives. On Saturday afternoons, they would roam Alberta Street, sleeves rolled up to contribute to guerrilla mural projects. Under strings of fairy lights and startled applause, they painted interlocking branches bursting with color, symbols, the lead artist said, of two lives becoming one. When passers-by asked for their names, they scrawled Aria plus Kai below the scene, sealing a public testament to a private bond. Later, muddy and paint-spattered, they would duck into quirky coffee shops, whispering over lavender-infused lattes and trading ideas for Aria's dream bakery. On weekdays, Aria tested new recipes in her small rental kitchen, while Kai, ever the diligent partner, conducted taste tests like a seasoned sommelier. He'd jot notes in a leather-bound journal, more cardamom spice, balance acidity, and Aria would tweak accordingly. Their greatest successes sprang from restless nights spent improvising. Maple chai swirl buns that pulled in passers-by with their intoxicating aroma, gluten-free scones dotted with macerated strawberries that made even skeptical visitors ask for seconds. In those moments, Aria witnessed the confidence in Kai's eyes, his unwavering belief that her ambitions would bear fruit. Each compliment he offered became a brick in the foundation of her burgeoning self-assurance. For years milestones came lined with the steady fragrance of fresh dough and the subtle crackle of celebratory champagne. On Aria's 31st birthday, Kai transformed their tiny rooftop into a secret greenhouse, buying potted succulents and stringing fairy lights around wrought iron railings. When Aria emerged from her apartment, breathtaken by the shimmering display, Kai presented a small saguaro cactus in a hand-painted pot. "Like us," he said, voice soft with promise, "will grow strong even in unexpected places." Aria pressed a grateful kiss to his cheek, the sticky sweetness of victory still clinging to her tongue. Their love was not without its trials. When Aria's mother suffered a stroke halfway across the state, Aria spent 3 heart-aching weeks at her childhood home. Every evening, she called Kai, watching his face illuminated by his office lamp as he managed bakery finances in her absence. True partnership meant late-night care packages, anise biscotti, peppermint tea, heartfelt notes reminding her to rest. Those cross-state hours stretched their bond, weaving threads of empathy and patience neither had anticipated, but they emerged stronger for it. When a routine health inspection threatened to close the bakery, it was Kai's tenacity that saved the day. He marched into City Hall with Aria at his side, determined and eloquent, and convinced the board to grant a 2-week compliance period. Together they installed sprinklers, reorganized the kitchen layout, and repainted walls in an all-nighter punctuated by laughter and exhaustion. By dawn, they stood back amid the spotless counters, logos gleaming under fluorescent lights, and shared a tired, triumphant hug. The victory tasted almost as sweet as Aria's signature cinnamon rolls, but it was victory nonetheless. In quieter times, they found an intimacy in routine. Sunday mornings became sacred rituals of buttery croissants and turmeric spice lattes on Aria's balcony, the fog rising off the Willamette like ghostly applause. On Tuesday nights, they hosted board game marathons in the bakery's back room, cardboard cities and colored tokens scattered across a reclaimed wood table. Friends cheering as they schemed over Caitlin and Carcassonne. Kai's competitive grin only faded when Aria snagged victory from his fingertips. And afterward they lingered over cocktail-inspired mocktails, toes brushing under the table, savoring the comfort of homegrown joy. 4 years of devotion had stitched their hearts together in a tapestry woven from sunrise hikes, impromptu art collabs, recipe breakthroughs, shared tears in family crises, and everyday warmth brewed over cups of tea. Aria and Kai had discovered that true love is not an abrupt flame, but a steady ember, fanned into brilliance by trust, respect, and laughter. As they looked toward the next chapter, plans for a flagship bakery space, dreams of future adventures, their hands found each other once more. And in that simple gesture, they both knew. No matter what storms or celebrations lay ahead, they would face them side by side, partners in every sense of the word. The morning of their wedding dawned in a gentle hush, as though the entire island of Maui had paused in anticipation. Aria slipped into her gown, soft ivory lace that glimmered like moonlight, while her sister carefully pinned jasmine blooms into her braid. Outside, windows framed the Pacific's glassy expanse, the waves sending a rhythmic lullaby through the villa. Kai stood at the end of the aisle, the soft ukulele chords of his friend's melody carrying on the warm trade wind. He was dressed in a tailored linen suit the color of seashells, his eyes fixed on the villa's garden entrance. Aria's breath caught when she saw him, that familiar calm in his gaze tempered by something new, an unspoken wonder. She remembered their first project together on that creaky Kentucky porch and marveled at how far they'd come. As she stepped into the courtyard, white petals carpeted the path and lanterns swung gently overhead. Friends and family formed a living gazebo, faces bright with joy. Aria's mother dabbed away tears. Kai's grandmother beamed in her straw hat. Aria walked forward arm in arm with her sister, the lace train whispering over sandstone tiles. When Kai reached for her hand, their fingers interlaced like long-lost promises fulfilled. The officiant, a longtime friend, spoke of love as both adventure and anchor. They recited their own vows. Kai's voice steady as he promised to champion Aria's dreams, to be her shelter in storms. Aria's tone warm as she vowed to nourish Kai's heart with kindness, to stand by him in every dawn and dusk. When Kai slipped the simple gold band onto Aria's finger, the setting sun painted the ocean in molten tangerine. Their lips met in a kiss that tasted of salt, sunlight, and all the years that had led them here. The celebration that followed unfolded like a watercolor dream. Tables draped in sheer linens curved around the lawn. Centerpieces of plumeria and gardenias swayed in the breeze. Guests sipped guava-infused champagne as lanterns twinkled overhead. Aria's grandmother danced barefoot to ukulele and steel guitar, her laughter echoing across the veranda. Kai's college roommate gave a heartfelt toast about 2 artists who'd built beauty from flour and paint, to applause that rose like tide. Dinner was a feast of island flavors: pineapple cilantro shrimp skewers, coconut-infused risotto, roasted sweet potatoes drizzled in honey. Aria and Kai moved between tables, greeting each guest with genuine warmth, pausing to steal glances that took their breath away. As lantern light settled on their faces, it revealed a devotion deeper than any fairy tale. Just after sunset, Kai led Aria to a secluded alcove by the shoreline. The lanterns gave way to tiki torches as the waves whispered secrets against the sand. He pulled her close, brushing stray tendrils from her face. "I dreamed of this day," he whispered, "but you've made it more beautiful than any dream." Aria's heart brimmed, her eyes shining. "With you," she replied, "I feel like anything is possible." He guided her onto the moonlit sand, bare feet leaving twin prints. The soft surf surrounded them, the ocean's lullaby their private song. As lanterns at the cliff's edge flickered and swayed, Kai dipped Aria into a gentle sway, their laughter blending with the night wind. In that moment, time paused, two souls bound by trust, tenderness, and the quiet promise of forever. When they finally returned to their celebration, hands clasped and hearts full, their guests rose in unison, lanterns raised high like a constellation come alive. Aria and Kai looked out at the sea of warm faces and flickering light, realizing that their fairy tale was not just in a single perfect day, but in every ordinary moment they would share beyond this island horizon. And so, beneath a sky strewn with stars, they stepped into their life together, ready for the promise of all their tomorrows. 3 months into their marriage, Aria awoke one morning to an empty bed and the distant hum of the city beyond her window. Kai's side of the linen sheets lay cool and unwrinkled, a silent testament to his absence. She slipped on her robe and padded downstairs, expecting to find him finishing his morning coffee in the kitchen. Instead, she found her own mug still half full on the counter and the faint aroma of jasmine tea lingering in the air. Kai's travel mug, engraved with their initials, rested unopened beside it. She tapped his name into her phone. No response. She glanced at the clock. 7:24 a.m. 3 minutes later, her phone buzzed with a single word. "Sorry."
No explanación.
No good morning. No love you. Just sorry. A knot formed in Aria's stomach. She had grown accustomed to Kai's steady presence, his sleepy grin at dawn, the gentle kiss he planted on her forehead before rushing out to tend to their bakery's overnight orders. But lately, those little rituals had faded. Dinners, once sacred moments of shared laughter over steaming pasta, had become missed appointments. Texts whittled down to business logistics, all efficiency and no warmth. At the bakery, Aria tried to focus on the rice sourdough she was kneading, but her mind spiraled. "He must be swamped with invoices," she whispered to herself as she shaped loaves. Yet, when she peeked out the window at 1 p.m., there was still no sign of him waiting by the cafe entrance, briefcase in hand. The morning sun had given way to a gray Pacific drizzle. She closed the shutter half-mast, her heart heavy. By mid-afternoon, the hesitation between her breaths turned into a dull ache. She checked her phone again, no new messages. She pushed open the cafe's door for a quick break and wrapped her gloves tighter around her cup of chai. As she stepped back into the drizzle, Kai's jacket, the very one he'd given her during their Kentucky build, hung over a chair by the register, his coffee untouched. The sight of it felt like a spotlight on her growing unease. That evening, Aria returned home early, determined to salvage the last semblance of connection. She lit a single pale blue candle on their kitchen table, arranged fresh peonies in a vase, and set out plates for two: roasted salmon, seasonal asparagus, and her special lemon tarragon risotto. The air filled with comforting aromas, but when the clock struck 6:30, the house remained silent. No door latch clicking, no shoes dropped in the entryway. Her phone vibrated, a calendar notification, board meeting at 7 p.m. from Kai's email. She closed her eyes and ran a hand through her hair. A board meeting? Again? After dinner? She resisted the urge to delete the alert and turned back to her candlelit feast. 1 place setting. 2 plates. She poured herself a glass of crisp white wine. As she ate, Aria's thoughts churned with memories of their early days. The way Kai's eyes lit up when she described her lavender honey croissants, the laughter they shared during pizza experiments in that tiny test kitchen, the warmth in his voice when he whispered, "You're my best adventure." None of that seemed to matter now. Everything felt tilted, skewed, as if their delicate fairy tale had lost its balance. After clearing her plate, she hovered by the front window, the candle's flame reflected in the glass. Outside, rain tapped against the pavement in nervous rhythms. She rehearsed her words, a gentle inquiry, a caring check-in. She typed, "I miss you. Can we talk tonight?" and hit send. Minutes dragged by. Then her phone buzzed with Kai's reply, "Running late. Don't wait up." Aria's shoulders slumped. "Don't wait up." The phrase echoed in her mind like an accusation rather than reassurance. She blew out the candle, leaving the kitchen in twilight. In the quiet that followed, she wondered when always had become maybe. Sleep came fitfully. Aria dreamed of creaking porches and sudden storms, of tools echoing in empty rooms, of faces fading into shadow. When she woke, the ache in her chest had settled into a determined resolve. She dressed quickly and headed to the bakery, bracing herself for the day. By mid-morning, shipments arrived: flour sacks, egg crates, vanilla beans. The bakery's rhythm pulsed around her, but Aria's movements felt mechanical. When she glanced at the empty chair behind the counter, where Kai would typically help with displays, her heart constricted. She realized this was no longer just a rough patch. Something deeper was shifting. As noon approached, Aria asked her trusted friend and baker, Lena, to cover the shop for an hour. Lena gave her a concerned look but nodded. "Go find him," she said softly. "This can't drag on." Aria drove to the office building where Kai's family business held meetings. The rain had turned the road slick, and her hands gripped the steering wheel tight. She rehearsed her speech. Calm but honest, no accusations, just a plea for clarity. On the lobby desk, she asked for Kai's suite number. The receptionist, sympathetic, handed over the card. Standing outside the glass doors of Suite 502, Aria's breaths came in shallow bursts. She touched the cold brass handle, hesitated, then entered. The office was bright with fluorescent lights and hushed voices. Kai sat at the head of a conference table, flanked by colleagues. He looked up, surprised, his briefcase half opened on the floor. "Kai," Aria said, voice steady despite her quivering heart, "we need to talk." His eyes shifted from the boardroom's polished wood to her soaked hair and determined stance. The room felt suddenly too small for the turmoil between them. Colleagues watched in silence, the tension thick as storm clouds. Kai stood slowly, clearing his throat.
Aria, eat.
She raised a hand, stopping him. "I've waited 3 months for always. Not running late. I've rearranged dinners, baked extra bread, and listened to your silence. Tell me what's happening." Everything paused, the ticking clock, the shifting rain outside. Even Kai's colleagues leaned in. Aria's heart hammered in her chest, every beat demanding the truth. In that moment, she realized their marriage could survive only if they bridged the distance between them, no matter how wide the gap had grown. And so, in a bustling conference room turned confessional, Aria Lennox vowed to find the answers she deserved, ready to face whatever storm lay ahead, because some cracks, once noticed, refuse to mend until honest light is shone upon them. By the time autumn cloaked Portland in copper and gold, Aria had grown increasingly uneasy. The gap between her and Kai no longer felt like a trickle, it was a widening chasm she couldn't ignore. Late-night texts arrived later. Kiss goodnight calls dwindled to punctuation marks. And during the rare evenings Kai did make it home, his eyes avoided hers, flicking instead to his phone. One crisp October morning, Aria unlocked the bakery before dawn, preparing dough for the day's first batch of chai spice buns. The doorbell chimed, and she turned to find Nova Sinclair standing in the doorway. Nova, her college roommate and best friend, eyes bright with purpose. She'd flown in from New York the previous night, citing urgent bakery business, but Aria suspected there was more behind Nova's arrival than spreadsheets and supply orders. "Nova," Aria squealed, enveloping her friend in a hug. The scent of Nova's perfume, jasmine and cedar, tangled with the smell of yeast and cinnamon. "Morning," Nova replied, stepping inside. She carried a leather portfolio stamped with the bakery's new logo. "I've got operations to streamline. Inventory check. Staff scheduling. We're going to make this place unstoppable. Aria smiled. Nova always had a knack for throwing herself into projects, but her heart fluttered uneasily. That's great. I could use the help. I'm swamped fixing the website issues and planning our holiday menu. Nova's expression flickered, a momentary shadow passing over her bright features. Actually, she began, lowering her voice to a confidential whisper, I need a favor that isn't on any agenda. She tapped the portfolio. I want you to trust me. Aria tilted her head. Of course. You've always had my back. Nova stepped closer, her eyes searching Kai's office door behind the counter.
Evenotstkaes, distracted.
He's been hiding in there more than usual. She paused, as though weighing her words. I've got some information, things I've seen, texts I've intercepted, that you deserve to know. Aria's breath hitched.
Heat rose in her cheeks.
What are you talking about? Nova flipped open the portfolio to reveal printed chat transcripts. I found these on Kai's development email. Messages with someone saved under the name M. She slid a sheet across the counter. Aria's eyes scanned the text. Miss your laugh. Can't focus until I see you. Last night was wonderful. Her stomach tightened as the world blurred.
Nova.
How?
I'm sorry.
Nova's voice trembled. I didn't want to believe it, but I've seen them at Ember Cafe, slipping off together into a quiet booth. She reached into her coat pocket and produced a small flash drive. I recorded an exchange on Monday. If you want it, it's here. Her hand shook as she placed it before Aria. Aria closed her eyes, trying to steady herself. Nova had always been fiercely loyal, protective even, but this was betrayal on a different level. Not from her friend, but from her husband and her best friend, both enmeshed in deception. The bakery's warmth suddenly felt stifling, as if the ovens themselves were mocking her. You did the right thing, Nova said gently, placing a comforting hand on Aria's arm. You deserve the truth, even if it hurts. Aria swallowed hard, glancing at Kai's closed office door, where he had probably been slamming away on his laptop, oblivious to the storm building outside. I thank you, she rasped. I need time to process this. Nova nodded, stepping back into her professional demeanor. Of course. I'll get started on the reorder plan. I'll be here as long as you need. As Nova ducked into the storage room, Aria slid the flash drive into her pocket. She felt hollow, an echo where her heart used to be. For 4 years, she'd built a life brick by brick with Kai. Dawn hikes, creative collaborations, milestone celebrations. And now, with one quick file transfer, all of it felt like sand slipping through her fingers. The morning rush began. Orders came in for pumpkin cinnamon loaves and cranberry brioche. Aria worked through the motions, shaping dough, dialing in the oven temperature, smiling at customers, while her mind replayed the transcripts. How long had this been going on? How many whispered exchanges at midnight? How many times had she trusted him only to find betrayal waiting? At noon, Kai emerged from his office, bleaching his hair from the harsh computer glow. He greeted Aria with a tired half-smile. Working hard. Aria forced a casual nod. Always. We're running low on flour.
Can you? She paused.
Her fingers tightening around the flash drive in her pocket. Beneath her calm exterior, a storm roared. As he walked behind the counter, Aria realized something fundamental had shifted. Trust. Once the foundation of everything they'd built was now fractured beyond repair. And the only question left was how wide the crack would become before it swallowed them both. Standing alone amid racks of golden pastries and the hum of the city's midday bustle, Aria took a steadying breath. She would find answers and then decide how to rebuild or walk away. Because some betrayals change us forever, and she refused to let herself crumble without knowing the full measure of the truth. The following week, Aria found herself stepping into Ember Cafe with trepidation she'd never felt before. Kai and Nova had chosen this quaint brick and wood spot for their project review, a thinly veiled catch-up that now reeked of betrayal. Aria parked her car 2 blocks away to avoid running into them. She tightened her coat against the November chill and approached the door as if walking into a courtroom. Inside, Ember Cafe's warm glow and soft jazz couldn't soothe her anxiety. She found an empty table at the back corner, ordered her usual lavender latte, and watched through the window as Kai and Nova arrived together, laughing in a way that used to belong only to her. Nova slipped an arm through Kai's as they ducked inside. Aria's chest seized. She sipped her latte, the floral sweetness bouncing unpleasantly on her tongue. Last night, she'd borrowed Riven's phone unlock trick, the one he used for secure app demos, and installed it in her own phone. The Midnight app icon had appeared overnight, a small moon on a black background. Subconsciously, Aria had resisted, but the ache in her gut yesterday had tipped her hand. She downloaded Midnight, input a sequence of gestures Riven had taught her, and there it was. An empty inbox. A prompt. Enter passcode. Her breath caught. Midnight was built for privacy, for disappearing threads, for lovers' secrets. Aria replayed the code Nova had slipped her in the bakery storage room. 1943, the year both their families' businesses began. Her heart hammered as she typed it in. The screen unlocked. A list of conversation threads appeared, each named only by a single initial. M.
N. D.
Aria's fingers trembled as she tapped M. A thread opened, blank at first glance, until she scrolled. Last night was everything. I can't wait for your visit tonight. Your laugh is the only thing I want to hear. Her vision blurred. The words danced before her eyes. She tapped the 3 dots in the corner and selected Load History. A file of past messages spilled onto the screen. Images from their weekend getaway. Kai and Nova at the coast. Nova's head on Kai's shoulder. A caption. Miss you already. Aria dropped into her chair, heart pounding so fiercely her ribs felt bruised. She steadied herself by gripping the edge of the table. The barista brought her latte refill, unaware of the storm brewing in Aria's soul. She waited until Kai and Nova had settled into their booth, then slipped off her coat and set out a simple plan. Step 1. Gather proof. Step 2. Confront. Step 3. Decide. Aria pocketed her phone and rose. Cup in hand, she walked past the counter to the restroom while masquerading as if nothing was wrong. Once inside, she locked the door and flicked her phone's brightness up, reading through the thread in grim detail. She took screenshots, saving them in a hidden album titled Truth. She then recorded a short video clip, Nova, framed by the cafe's amber lights, leaning in to whisper something in Kai's ear. Kai's expression softened, too soft for a business discussion. She swallowed hard and locked her phone. It was time for the final step. Emerging from the restroom, Aria steeled her expression. She walked straight to the booth where Kai and Nova sat, Nova's laughter bright against the cafe's hushed buzz. Absent-minded, Kai scrolled on his phone. Aria cleared her throat. Kai, she said softly but firmly. He looked up mid-laugh. His smile dropped when he saw her face. Nova's froze too, eyes widening as the color drained from her cheeks. Aria, Kai said, voice tight. What are you? Aria reached into her coat pocket and produced her phone, already on the screenshots. She tapped the screen, scrolling through the messages and the grainy video evidence she'd captured after watching them. Nova's hand flew to her mouth. Kai's jaw clenched. This is... Kai began, then stopped, swallowed. His eyes flicked to Nova, then back to Aria. Aria, please. Aria held up a finger, silencing him. You don't get to please me, she said. For months, you've been vanishing into your office with urgent work. I left you voicemails, texted you, asked you to dinner. You ignored me. But you had time for her. Nova reached out, voice trembling.
Aria.
I'm sorry. It wasn't like that. No, Aria said, stepping closer until the tabletop separated them. It was exactly like that. Her voice cracked. You lied, both of you. I trusted you. She flicked to the video clip. I recorded this last night. Kai's expression wavered between guilt and shame. Nova's eyes brimmed with remorse. Patrons stared, but Aria didn't care. Years of love, devotion, collaboration, erased in a few swipes. She tossed the phone onto the table. I need you both out. Her voice shook but held iron. Kai sprang up, chair scraping harshly.
Aria, come on.
Let's talk. I gave you a chance, she said, voice brittle with fury and heartbreak. You threw it away. Who I am doesn't deserve this. My life, my dreams, my trust. She turned to Nova. You know what friend means? You. Aria, stop. Nova choked out, tears spilling down her cheeks. I never meant to hurt you. Too late, Aria said, heartbreaking. She strode from the booth, ignoring Kai's outstretched hand and Nova's pleading gaze. Outside, the cold air whipped around her, carrying her ragged breaths. The cafe's warmth receded behind her like a lie she refused to live. Standing on the sidewalk, Aria slid down until she sat on the damp curb. Her phone buzzed, Nova's name flashing on the screen, followed by Kai's. She ignored them both. Within her coat pocket, the flash drive glinted under streetlights. It held the undeniable proof of her undoing, and yet its weight felt lighter than the burden in her chest. She pulled it out and studied it as if it were both the cause of her pain and the key to her freedom. Aria took a shuddering breath and rose to her feet. Whatever came next, whether rebuilding or letting go, began now, in the cold night air outside Ember Cafe. The secrets were uncovered. The truth was laid bare. And there was no turning back. The rain had stopped by dawn, leaving the sidewalk glistening and the air crisp with autumn's promise. Aria returned to Ember Cafe before sunrise, determination propelling her through the door. Nova's tear-streaked face flickered in her memory, but Aria knew she could no longer afford half measures. Today she would arm herself with proof so clear, so definitive, that neither Kai nor Nova could deny what had unfolded. Inside the empty cafe, she retrieved her flash drive from her coat pocket, its black casing worn from nervous fingers. Behind the counter, she found an unused MacBook perched by the cash register. She plugged in the drive and watched as a single folder appeared. Truth. Inside were two subfolders, screenshots and video clips. Aria opened screenshots first, scrolling through hundreds of images, every whispered message, every late-night confirmation from M to N. Every photo that Nova had intercepted. Kai's hand brushing Nova's arm, Nova's lips curved in confidences meant only for him. With trembling hands, Aria copied the folder to the desktop. Then she navigated to video clips. The first clip showed Kai and Nova in Ember's far corner booth, the camera's perspective hidden by the potted ferns behind them. She watched as Nova leaned forward, brushing hair from Kai's face, whispering something that made him close his eyes in pleasure. She jotted down the timestamp, 4 minutes and 37 seconds. The second clip captured Nova waiting outside Kai's apartment building as he stepped out at midnight, their embrace long and full of familiarity no married couple should discard. She exported both clips to files labeled Affair 1_mon_Ember_0437 MP4. Affair 2_appstoop_2312 MP4. Aria's pulse pounded. This wasn't just suspicion or hearsay. It was criminally clear. She opened a blank pages document and began outlining the evidence. Exhibit A, screenshots. Message from M to N on midnight. Can't wait until tonight. October 17th, 2025, 11:04 p.m. Message from N to M. I miss your laugh.
10182025, 12:22 nachts.
Photo_20251017_Ember Booth, JPG, Kai and Nova in booth, arms entwined. Exhibit B, video clips. Affair 1_Mon_Ember_0437, MP4, Nova's hairbrush. Kai's eyes closed. Affair 2_Appstoop_2312, MP4, embrace outside Kai's apartment. She glanced at the cafe's clock, 7:02 a.m. Within an hour, the morning rush would begin. Aria needed a safe space to compile physical evidence. She zipped the screenshots and video files into a password-protected archive named Family Proof. zip and emailed it to Riven at her secret account. Riven had ensured that no digital trace would lead back to Aria. She typed a single line in the email body. Open and decrypt at 12 p.m. Instructions inside.
A.
Then she deleted the sent draft from her outbox. No digital breadcrumbs.
No regrets.
Next, Aria printed the exhibit list screenshots and still frames from the video on Ember's old printer, pressing Save as PDF and selecting Paper Feed. 2 minutes later, pages began spitting out in black and white clarity. Screenshots annotated with dates and timestamps, still frames captioned, See affair 1_monember_0437, MP4 at 4 minutes and 37 seconds. She organized the papers in a ring binder labeled Evidence against Kai. On a clean sheet at the front, she wrote in bold, To whom it may concern. Attached are irrefutable images and recordings documenting the extramarital affair between Kai Winterbourne and Nova Sinclair. These exhibits will be presented in full at our meeting today. Turning off the lights, Aria tucked the binder under her arm and exited Ember Cafe, ready for the day's confrontation. She headed straight to the small business center where Riven had rented a private meeting room. No questions asked, keycard access only. A few blocks away, the afternoon's light glittered through wet leaves, but Aria's mind was singularly focused. At precisely 11:55 a.m., she swiped her keycard and entered the meeting room. Riven sat behind the table, laptop open, its screen dark until Aria set down the binder. I've never seen you this calm, Riven said quietly, raising an eyebrow. Aria lowered herself into the chair on the other side of the table. I have to be, she replied, opening the binder to the first page. By 1 p.m., Kai and Nova will meet me here. I emailed them, pancakes and coffee on me. They'll think it's a casual intervention. Riven nodded, aligning her watch. And if they refuse? Then I withdraw support completely. No more bakery funding, no more friendship. I walk away with or without closure. But I want them in this room. They spent the next 10 minutes testing playback of the 2 video clips, audio cranked up just enough to catch whispered words, every syllable undeniable. Riven unpacked portable speakers, ensuring the sound would fill the room. She loaded the screenshots into a slideshow. Aria watched each image flash on screen, text messages, close embraces, body language that spoke louder than any apology. At 12:30 p.m., Riven's phone buzzed, a joint text from Kai and Nova. We'll be there at 12:45. Thank you. Aria stood, smoothing her blouse. Time to end this. She walked to the small kitchenette in the corner, poured 2 cups of black coffee, and placed them on the table. The aroma felt like a final act of hospitality, a calm before the storm. 3 minutes later, the door clicked. Kai entered first, professional in a navy blazer, eyes immediately scanning the binder on the table. Nova followed, clutching her purse, guilt etched in her posture. Kai's face flickered from relief at seeing Aria uninjured to confusion at the binder's bold title. What is all this? He asked, voice tight. Aria gestured to the chairs.
Sit, please.
Her tone left no room for argument. He obeyed, as did Nova, folding her arms across her chest. Aria tapped her watch. In 30 minutes, we'll review each exhibit. Then I'll decide what happens next. She clicked the binder open to Exhibit A. Que skolder slumped. Aria, I can explain. Aria raised a hand. We'll start with the screenshots. She advanced the slideshow on her phone, then mirrored it to Riven's laptop screen. Nova's apologetic eyes, Kai's failing attempts at denials, none could stand against the march of pixelated truth. When they reached Exhibit B, Aria played the first clip. Nova's whisper transformed the room into an echo chamber of betrayal. Kai's stunned expression flickered with regret. Aria watched them break, hearts laid bare. I wanted the truth, she said softly, voice steady but wet with emotion. Now I have it. She closed the binder, standing to collect her coffee. Kai reached out, voice raw. Please, Aria, let me explain. Aria shook her head, emotions she'd spent months suppressing rising like tide. I will listen. Right now, though, I need space. I need to decide who I am without you two at my side. She turned on her heel and walked out, leaving Kai and Nova in the sterile quiet of incontrovertible truth. Their whispers followed her as the door clicked shut.
Que? Nova.
But Aria no longer needed names. She had the evidence, and with it, the power to reclaim her life. Aria never imagined she would find herself in a lawyer's office so soon after uncovering Kai and Nova's betrayal, yet here she sat, fingers drumming against a polished mahogany table. The Mid-City Legal Center was hushed, its walls lined with framed diplomas and shelves of law tomes. Across from her, attorney Morgan Chen, calm, composed, mid-40s, reviewed a stack of papers. The proposed divorce petition, asset division schedules, and a draft of a separation agreement. Mrs. Lennox, Morgan began, sliding the petition forward. I've drafted these documents to be uncontested. You and Mr. Winterbourne can finalize everything in as little as 2 weeks. No children are involved, and there's minimal joint property. It's designed to be swift and straightforward. Aria nodded, relief and sorrow warring in her chest. She'd spent the past days gathering paperwork, property deeds for the small bakery, bank statements, her personal accounts. She had insisted on retaining both her maiden name and full ownership of Lennox and Company. Patisserie. Kai's family business shares were untouched. She wanted nothing more to do with them. Morgan continued, if you agree to these terms, I'll forward the paperwork to Mr. Winterbourne's attorney today. Once he signs, we can schedule a final hearing. You could be legally divorced within 10 days. Aria took a steadying breath, recalling the betrayal etched in every text and video clip she compiled. 4 years of sunrise hikes, collaborative recipes, shared laughter, they were now memories overshadowed by heartbreak. Yet, her decision was resolute. She picked up the pen and signed the petition. Aria Lennox, her signature firm and deliberate. That afternoon, Aria stood outside the probate courthouse, a slender stack of documents in her hand. The towering facade of gray stone lent the moment a solemn gravity. Inside, the courtroom was small, wood-paneled walls, a single judge's bench, and rows of empty chairs. Aria and Kai sat side by side, barely 3 feet apart, yet worlds separated by choices and secrets. Judge Ramirez called the case. Case 2025, CV 1147, Lennox versus Winterbourne. Kai shifted uncomfortably, straightening his blazer. Aria's heart pounded, but she kept her gaze fixed forward. Morgan Chen introduced the decree. Your Honor, both parties have agreed on the terms of an uncontested divorce. We request the court finalize the dissolution of marriage and approve the division of assets as outlined in the separation agreement. Judge Ramirez reviewed the signed petitions and asset schedules. Mr. Winterbourne, do you agree to these terms? He asked, voice resonant in the hush. Kai's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed. He looked at Aria, guilt flickering in his eyes, then met the judge's question. Yes, Your Honor, he said quietly. Mrs. Lennox, the judge prompted. Aria exhaled and answered. Yes, Your Honor. Judge Ramirez tapped his gavel. Very well. The bond of marriage between Aria Lennox and Kai Winterbourne is hereby dissolved, effective immediately. I wish you both success in your separate futures. The gavel echoed once, twice. Aria felt a strange lightness wash over her as they rose. Without looking at Kai, she gathered her belongings, her leather purse, the copy of the decree, the small notebook of future baking plans. Kai lingered, eyes downcast. Outside the courtroom, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the steps. Aria stepped onto the sidewalk, her divorce certificate fluttering in one hand. She didn't pause to watch Kai emerge. She trusted he would leave. The finality was cathartic, no contested hearings, no drawn-out battles, just a swift severance of vows shattered by deception. Later, Aria returned to the bakery alone. The bell above the door tinkled as she entered, and her staff greeted her with supportive smiles. The ovens glowed warmly, cinnamon and cardamom scents mingling in the air.
Aria exhaled.
Leaning back against the counter, She'd already forwarded her divorce decree to the bank and changed her voicemail greeting. No mention of we, only I and me. Her assistant, Lena, approached with a steaming mug of lavender tea. "How are you holding up?" she asked softly. Aria accepted the cup, its warmth steadying her. "Better," she admitted. "It's done." She tapped the decree in her purse. No more waiting, no more what-ifs. Lena squeezed her shoulder. "You're strong, Aria. And now you can focus on rebuilding." Aria nodded, eyes rising to the display of freshly baked pastries, tartlets dusted with powdered sugar, flaky croissants shaped like crescents, spiced pumpkin scones. She took a deep breath. Her life might have broken into pieces, but she had her bakery, her creativity, and an unwavering sense of self. That evening, after closing time, Aria stood alone under the bakery's soft light, sweeping crumbs from the floor. She paused and set her broom aside, gazing out the glass door at the empty street. For the first time in months, she felt a quiet clarity. Her future was open, not defined by what had been lost, but by what she would build from the ground up. Tomorrow, she would return to the grind. New recipes to test, holiday menus to plan, loyal customers to greet. But tonight, Aria allowed herself a small, private victory. She was no longer trapped in a life that wasn't hers. She was free to write her own story, one crumb, one loaf, one sunrise at a time. 2 days after the courthouse's gavel fell, Aria returned to her bakery before dawn, determined to reclaim her routine. Yet when she woke in her studio apartment that morning, her body sent an unmistakable alarm, a wave of nausea too pronounced for mere coffee jitters. Dismissing it as stress, she downed ginger tea and dove into inventory counts. But by mid-afternoon, dizziness pinned her to a stool behind the counter. Lena noticed. "You look pale," she said, placing a reassuring hand on Aria's shoulder. Aria forced a smile. "Just tired," she lied, hunching over a stack of invoices. Yet when the nausea returned 10 minutes later, sharper and laced with dizziness, Aria knew something was wrong. That evening, she secured the shop early. The streetlights had flickered on by the time she reached her apartment, and the city's hum felt distant as she fumbled through her purse for the small box of home pregnancy tests she kept just in case. Her hands shook as she followed the instructions. 2 lines meant pregnant, 1 line not. She pressed her forehead against the cool bathroom tile, heart pounding as she waited. 30 seconds later, the result blinked back. 2 lines. Positive. A single breath escaped her lips, a gasp that echoed her racing thoughts. She stared at the stark symbol, willing it to slip away. But the faint second line was unmistakable. In the sudden hush, memories flooded in. The night before the divorce hearing, when she and Kai had agreed to finalize terms, a bittersweet reunion born of residual affection, a moment of closeness, an impulse, an imperfect farewell. And now, this unexpected life. Her mind reeled. She was 2 weeks late, exactly overlapping that final night. The math was undeniable. Aria sank onto the edge of the tub, her fingers grazing the pregnancy test as if it were a fragile truth she couldn't bear to fully grasp. Tears blurred her vision, tears of shock, fear, and an inkling of hope she refused to embrace until she knew more. She dried her palms and called her mother, voice trembling. "I need you," she whispered, seconds before the voicemail picked up. She left a single message. "Mom, I need to see you. It's urgent." At 6 the next morning, Aria's mother, Karen, wrapped a thick shawl around her shoulders and hugged her daughter fiercely at the clinic's parking lot. "Whatever it is," Karen said, eyes glistening, "we'll face it together." Inside the pastel-walled exam room, Aria perched on the paper-covered table, legs swinging. Each echo of footsteps in the hallway felt magnified. Dr. Patel, mid-50s and reassuring, entered with a gentle smile. "I hear congratulations are in order?" She held out the home test. Aria nodded, a lump in her throat. The doctor explained the next steps. A urine HCG test to confirm hormone levels, then a transvaginal ultrasound to pinpoint gestational age. Aria's nerves flared.
I
thought the divorce meant freedom, she whispered. I'm not sure what this means. Dr. Patel offered a compassionate look. Life doesn't follow our plans perfectly, but this little one has already begun its journey. Let's gather information first. Then we can discuss your options. 20 minutes later, Aria sat clutching a paper cup of water. The lab tech had drawn her blood with practiced ease, and Karen held her hand as they waited for results. When the nurse returned, smiling, she said the HCG levels indicated 8 weeks of pregnancy, not the 2 Aria had anticipated. A rush of emotion, elation, terror, crashed over her. Karen squeezed her hand. You're in there, she said softly. Aria nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. I know, she managed.
Moment late.
They moved to ultrasound. In a dim room lit by the flickering monitor, Aria lay back as Dr. Patel guided the probe. The grayscale image resolved into a tiny silhouette, a flickering heartbeat pulsing with life. Aria gasped at the rhythmic thump, like a small drum echoing in her chest. Karen stood behind her, hand on her shoulder, both awed by the spectacle. It's beautiful, Dr. Patel said. And healthy. You're carrying a strong embryo. Aria closed her eyes, absorbing the reality. She was going to be a mother. Fear coiled in her stomach. Raising a child alone, after a painful divorce, seemed impossible. Yet watching that faint heartbeat, she felt a fierce protectiveness ignite within her. Later that day, Aria sat at her kitchen table, the ultrasound photos laid before her. The little bean-shaped life, barely visible, now anchored every dream, every fear. Her phone rang, Kai's name on the screen. She stared, heart pounding. He'd texted earlier. I want to talk. Now he wanted a face-to-face meeting. Aria ended the call without answering. She picked up her phone, browsed to Kai's email thread confirming their uncontested divorce. Beneath it, her own message from Dawn. I'm pregnant, Kai. She reread the words. She'd sent them not long after leaving the clinic. Raw with emotion. He hadn't replied. She set her phone aside. Whatever Kai's plans, she had her own. This child deserved safety, love, and honesty. With Karen's help, she would build a nurturing home. She would also have a bakery to support them, a community that already rallied around her. She would be both mother and provider. Yet, part of her longed for Kai's presence, his calm strength, his taste-testing discernment. But she refused to beg for support. This baby, half his, deserved her best. And she would not let fear or betrayal dictate her future. Aria picked up the phone and typed a new message to Kai.
I'm pregnant.
8 weeks tonight. We need to discuss how to move forward for our child's sake. Thank you. She added Karen to the email thread, so her mother would be present in every step. Then she exhaled, bracing herself for the unknown. The future was unwritten, some chapters dark, some bright, but she had one truth unwavering. She was going to protect this new life, no matter the cost. Under the waning afternoon light, Aria folded the ultrasound images into her wallet, closed the door behind her, and stepped forward into a realm of possibilities she never chose, but now embraced with unwavering resolve. The morning after her ultrasound, Aria Lennox rose before dawn, the kitchen still cloaked in pre-dawn hush. She cradled a steaming mug of mint tea and stared at her laptop screen, Lennox & Co. Calm gleamed back with its fresh design. Late nights spent collaborating with Riven had paid off. The new site showcased high-resolution photos of lavender honey buns, an online shop for nationwide orders, and a little sprout page celebrating her baby's journey. Her fingers trembled as she clicked publish, then watched the confirmation banner flash. Your site is live. Downstairs, the bakery ovens glowed warmly as Aria arrived in her apron, 9 weeks pregnant, and adjusting to the subtle shift in her center of balance. The scent of rosemary sea salt focaccia filled the air. Lena emerged from the kitchen, wiping flour from her hands. Aria, the site went live, she announced, phone in hand. We already have orders from Seattle. A surge of gratitude warmed Aria's chest. "That's incredible," she said, placing a gentle hand over her bump. "Feels like tiny hands are steering us forward." Riven arrived moments later to install the final e-commerce plugins. As he tapped away behind the counter, he glanced up and smiled. "Everything's seamless. I set up automatic inventory alerts. So no more running out of flour." "Thank you," Aria breathed. "I couldn't have done this without you." Aria spent the next days nesting, transforming her studio apartment into a cozy haven for herself and her unborn child. She assembled a hand-painted crib in soft sage green, lining it with watercolor prints of foxes and fir trees. Karen, her mother, unpacked ball gowns of baby clothes and stitched a patchwork quilt from her earliest apron fabrics. "Every stitch tells our story," Karen said, tying the final knot. Aria pressed the quilt to her cheek, feeling the love woven into each square. In the bakery, Aria launched Mother's Morning every Tuesday, offering new and expecting mothers free tea and tart pairings and a relaxed space to connect. The back room soon overflowed with laughter, shared advice, and tiny socks drying on a makeshift clothesline between stools. A local doula, Marisol, volunteered to teach prenatal yoga on the courtyard patio. Aria marveled at how Heartbreak had birthed a community of support she never imagined. Balancing growth and pregnancy tested Aria's stamina. She staggered her schedule, dawn proofing bread, mid-morning doctor appointments, afternoons overseeing online orders, and evenings resting. On days her strength waned, Lena kneaded dough with practiced ease, and Riven fielded customer emails. Their teamwork reminded Aria she didn't have to face every challenge alone. At 12 weeks, Aria felt the first flutter, a tiny pulse beneath her ribs like a hummingbird's wing beat. She paused amid kneaded dough, eyes closed, savoring the life growing inside. Lena noticed and whispered, "Baby's saying hello." Aria smiled through tears, her heart full. Inspired by her journey, Aria unveiled the Blossom Collection, elderflower lemon tarts, rosemary apricot buns, and chamomile lavender loaf. Each bore a little sprout emblem, a delicate leaf. Local press ran the headline, "Expectant Baker's Tiny Muse Inspires New Menu," and orders poured in from across the country. Strangers wrote messages of support, sharing stories of resilience and hope. As November's first frost settled over Portland, Aria and Karen walked home under street lamps. "Look how far you've come," Karen said, hand on Aria's shoulder. "From heartbreak to growing a business to building a family." Aria rested a hand on her bump. "It's been the hardest and most beautiful months," she admitted. "I never imagined finding joy after everything, but this," she tapped her belly, "feels like my greatest recipe yet." Karen laughed softly. "And I can't wait to taste it." That night, Aria sat at her desk and wrote a letter to her unborn child. "Dear little one, you arrived on the wings of surprise. You remind me that life's beauty often emerges from unexpected turns. I promise to nurture you with love, kindness, and just the right touch of sweetness. Together, we'll weather storms and bake sunshine anew. Forever your baker and your mother, Aria." She closed the notebook with a contented sigh. A bold new beginning had taken root, forged from heartbreak, community, and unwavering hope. Dawn would find her back at the counter, mixing dough, greeting customers, preparing for the day ahead, each step guided by the bright promise of new life and the resilient spirit she had reclaimed. 5 years had passed since Aria Lennox first fled Portland to rebuild her life, bakery, and heart. In that time, Lennox and Company, Patisserie, had flourished into a beloved neighborhood staple. Known for its seasonal Blossom Collection and community events like Mother's Morning and prenatal yoga Saturdays. Aria's daughter, whom she affectionately called Poppy in homage to her mother's flower-themed menus, was now a bright-eyed 5-year-old who loved helping with cookie decorating and listening to her mother recite bedtime stories of magical sugar plums. On a clear spring afternoon, Aria closed up the bakery for a rare personal errand, lunch at Ember Cafe, the very place where her world had fractured years ago. It was Poppy's first field trip without her classmates, a mother-daughter outing in celebration of Poppy's birthday week. Aria had promised Poppy a picnic-style scavenger hunt through town, ending with her favorite shimmer rose latte. She carried Poppy in her arms as they approached Ember's blue door, Poppy chattering excitedly about spotting pink cherry blossoms on Burnside. Inside, Ember looked almost unchanged. Its exposed brick walls, hanging Edison bulbs, and mismatched chairs still gave it that cozy, historic charm. A few regulars nursed cappuccinos at the counter, and a barista prepared pastries under glass domes. Aria scanned the room for the large window booth by the potted ferns, the spot where she had once discovered Kai's betrayal. But something caught her eye at a table near the back, a tall figure with familiar tawny hair, leaning forward to speak gently to a small child. Her breath caught. At first glance, it could have been any father with his daughter. Yet the stance, an arm laced protectively around the child, was unmistakably Kai's. His profile, softened by time, still bore the calm strength she'd once loved. The little girl beside him studied a picture book, her dark hair curly and untamed, eyes bright as polished chestnuts. She wore a tiny denim jacket over a pastel dress, uncannily reminiscent of Poppy's outfits. Aria's heart pounded as she held Poppy tighter. Should she turn away? Wouldn't that be cowardly? Poppy squirmed. "Mama, I want a cookie from the case," she said, tugging at Aria's apron. Aria knelt, brushing a lock of hair behind Poppy's ear. "Of course, baby. Let's pick one together." She guided Poppy toward the counter and bought 2 lavender shortbread cookies. As she paid, she noticed the barista, Claire, giving her a subtle thumbs up, an unspoken nod that Aria had overcome her fear of Ember. Tray in hand, Aria steered Poppy back past the same table. Kai and his daughter looked up. Time seemed to warp in that moment. Kai's eyes widened, the girl's mouth curved into a shy smile. Aria paused. "Kai," she said, voice steady but soft. He rose immediately, chair scraping. "Aria," he murmured, as if the name still carried weight. Poppy peeked from behind Aria's skirts. "Mama, who is that?"
Aria straightened.
Knees nearly buckling, she wiped her hand on her apron. "That's someone from a long time ago," she said gently. Poppy nodded, accepting the mystery. Kai stepped forward, keeping a respectful distance. I didn't expect to see you here." Aria offered the tray to Poppy and herself a cookie. "I come here sometimes," she said, voice low. She didn't want to shout their history across the cafe. "It's meaningful." Kai glanced at his daughter, then back to Aria. "I'm here with Lena," he said quietly. Aria blinked. The little girl beside him wasn't Poppy. It was Lena's daughter, Nova's child. Unknown to Aria until now. Kai must have remarried or welcomed a new partner. "We're celebrating Mia's spring break. We don't want to intrude." Aria nodded, surprised at the smooth ease in his tone. "No intrusion," she said, insight piercing through years of hurt. "We're both parents, right?" He managed a small, sad smile. "I hope you're doing well." "I am," Aria replied, looking at Poppy munching her cookie. "Very well." She took a measured breath. "You have a beautiful daughter." His gaze followed hers. "Thank you. And Poppy is beautiful too." For a few seconds, they simply stood there, 2 former lovers living separate chapters of a shared past, their children bridging the gap. The cafe's jazz background washed over them, familiar yet new. Aria felt something loosen in her chest, the long-held ache, the jagged edges of betrayal, now dimmed by time and growth. Kai cleared his throat. "Would you like to sit?" he offered, nodding toward the table. "We can talk."
Aria hesitated.
Memories surfaced. The evidence binder, the painful confrontations, the bitter divorce. But those were chapters closed. She realized forgiveness wasn't erasing the past. It was acknowledging it without letting it poison the present. Poppy tugged at her hand. "Mama?" she asked. Aria knelt to Poppy's level. "Do you want to sit with Daddy and Mia?" she asked. Poppy considered, then shook her head. "No, thank you. I like sitting with you." Aria smiled, ruffled Poppy's hair, then stood. "Thank you," she said to Kai. He nodded.
I.
I'm glad you're happy, he said quietly.
Aria nodded.
You too. She turned, hand in hand with Poppy, toward the exit. Behind them, Kai sat with his daughter. And for a moment Aria allowed herself one backward glance. Kai smiled at Aria's retreating form, a genuine, unburdened smile, free of guilt, free of regret. It was a moment of peace neither of them had earned, but both had come to deserve. Outside, the afternoon sky was clear, petals drifting in a gentle breeze. Poppy skipped ahead, pointing at flowering trees. Aria breathed deeply, gratitude glowing in her chest. The past had shaped her, but it did not define her. Here, in the warmth of Ember's front steps, she realized life could still deliver unexpected reunions, ones that heralded healing rather than heartbreak. And so, mother and daughter walked on, lanterns of hope guiding their way home, ready for whatever adventures awaited. It was nearly a year after Aria Lennox had returned to Ember Cafe for that fateful reunion when the true test of her compassion arrived. Snow had fallen softly across Portland, frosting the streets in a pure white hush. Inside Lennox and Company, patisserie. The ovens glowed through the late afternoon as customers lined up for the holiday blossom breads and Poppy's gingerbread cupcakes, delicate confections decorated with miniature fondant sprigs. Aria balanced a tray of freshly glazed scones as she moved behind the counter. A bell chimed, and in walked a familiar figure, Kai Winterbourne, wearing a dark overcoat and carrying a cedar wreath. He paused at the door, scanning the packed room until his gaze found hers. Aria's breath stuttered. She had resolved never to cross his threshold uninvited, yet here he stood, brows knitted in apprehension. Aria, Kai managed, voice low. He approached the counter. I'm sorry to do this to you, but I need your help. The hush spread as regulars recognized him. Lena stepped up, hands hovering half an inch from the cash register. Aria set down the tray, glancing at her daughter Poppy, who sat with Karen at a corner table, eyes wide at seeing Daddy again. Aria swallowed and motioned toward the back. In the kitchen, she said, voice steady. She knew compassion demanded action before words. Inside the heating hum, Kai removed his gloves, revealing trembling hands. Thank you, he whispered. I hear you've been doing holiday charity orders for the women's shelter. They're expecting more than we projected.
And I
have extra funds and contacts with local farms. I'd like to donate pumpkins and cranberries if you can use them. Aria's heart constricted. The women's shelter, orphan mothers, survivors of domestic violence, had become Aria's personal mission after her own betrayal. She organized weekly pastry deliveries there, warm bread to feed bellies, gentle kindness to soothe souls. To learn that Kai wanted to help now, when she least expected it, brought a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Why? She asked softly. After everything, why now? Kai exhaled, eyes stinging. Because I realize that resentment is a winter that never melts. I see how much you've given back to the community, your warmth, your time. I want to help even if you never forgive me. Because I believe in your mission. Aria studied his face, the sincerity in his gaze, the humility in his stance. Forgiving Kai had once seemed impossible. Now it felt like a lifeline. Not for him, but for the women she served. Compassion, she knew, meant acting for others above pride. All right, she said, voice gentle. Let's do it. Kai's relief was palpable as he retrieved his wreath. Meet me at the shelter at noon? I'll bring a trailer of supplies. Aria nodded, turning back through the swinging door as Lena peeked in. We've got cucumbers in the fridge, Lena said with a grin. Looks like we're catering twice today. That afternoon, under overcast skies, Aria led Kai and a team of staff through the shelter's brick courtyard. The building stood modest but solid, its windows aglow with laughter and whispered conversations. Inside, dozens of women and children gathered for the weekly holiday feast Aria organized, a long folding table laden with cherry pies, golden biscuits, and steaming mugs of spiced cider. As Kai and Lena unloaded crates of squash and berries donated by local farms, Shelter director Ms. Aguilar approached. "Ms. Lennox," she said, embracing Aria. "This means so much, especially now." Aria smiled at the line of tired but hopeful faces. "Let's get cooking," she replied. Under her guidance, women and children rolled pie crusts, filled dough with cranberry compote, and gingerly piped frosting on cookies. Kai joined the floured fray, kneading dough while chatting gently with a young mother named Serena, who cradled a 3-month-old. "You're a dad?" Serena asked, nodding at his gentle handling.
Kiss me, lad. Yes.
"Learning every day." Serena nodded, eyes bright despite exhaustion. "Thank you for helping. It means more than you know." As laughter and music filled the room, Aria watched flows of kindness weave around her. Forgiveness here was not a concession to pain, but an act of strength. When the kitchen buzz paused,
Kai leaned in.
"Thank you for letting me help," he said quietly. Aria wiped flour from her hands, meeting his gaze. "Thank you for stepping up where it counts." Ms. Aguilar clapped her hands. "Ladies, dinner's served." The line moved towards steaming bowls of savory stew and baskets of hot rolls. Aria and Kai stood side by side, handing meals to mothers and children. When Poppy bounded in, cheeks rosy from the cold, she threw herself at her father's legs. Kai scooped her up as she giggled and called, "Daddy." Aria felt her eyes mist. The sight of parent and child reunited in joy, despite past scars, sealed her conviction that compassion could heal even the deepest wounds. As the last bowl was passed and the final pie slice dispatched, Aria turned to Kai. "You did good today." Kai took a breath, knelt beside her. "I want to keep doing good," he said. "Not for me, for them."
Aria nodded.
"Then let's do it together." She offered her hand. Kai clasped it, a spark of understanding between them. No magic erased past betrayals, but here and now, they forged a new alliance, one founded on empathy, service, and mutual respect. In the heart of winter's shelter, Aria realized the fateful pains of the past had brought her to this moment. A choice to give, forgive, and grow beyond old grievances. And as snow fell lightly outside, the warm glow of the community kitchen shone brighter than any candle, proof that the greatest gifts come from hearts willing to embrace forgiveness and kindle hope for all. The dawn broke gently over Portland, painting the sky in soft apricot and rose. Aria Lennox stood at her bakery's front window, shoulders squared and heart full. Snow from the previous night had melted into brazen streaks on the sidewalks, but inside Lennox and Company, potties free, warmth bloomed in every corner, steam drifting from ovens, laughter rising from wooden tables, and that familiar scent of cardamom and lavender drifting in the air. Today was the day Aria had long awaited, the grand opening of her second location, a bright, sunlit cafe in the Pearl District she designed herself, cherrywood counters and potted herbs lining every windowsill. Behind her, young Poppy bounded in, rosy-cheeked and eager, clutching a tiny rolling pin borrowed from their home kitchen. "Mama, can I help?" she asked, eyes shining like polished chestnuts. Aria knelt to cradle her daughter's face. "Of course, sweetheart,"
she said.
"Today you're my assistant manager for special deliveries." She placed the rolling pin in Poppy's small hands. "But first, let's welcome our guests." As the clock hands swept toward 8, a steady stream of loyal customers and new faces greeted Aria at the ribbon-strewn entrance. The community had rallied behind her. Neighbors, mothers from the shelter, even Nova Sinclair, who now co-parented 2-year-old Mia with a partner. Nova approached quietly, offering a white and gold teacup and daisies. "I wouldn't miss this,"
she said.
Their eyes met in a gentle acknowledgement of shared history and new beginnings. Kai Winterbourne arrived next. Branches of flowering quince tucked into his coat, his family's gift for the new space. His steps were measured, respectful. When he saw Aria, his face lit with genuine pride. He paused, watching Aria cradle Poppy on her hip as she directed staff to place warm trays of shortbread treats on side tables. Aria offered Kai a teacup, her smile warm. "Thank you for coming," she said. He lifted the cup respectfully. I wouldn't miss it, he replied softly. You've built something beautiful. Aria nodded, eyes drifting to the horizon of suspended Edison bulbs overhead. It's just the beginning, she said, and I have a feeling about tomorrow. A hush fell as Aria stepped forward for the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Mayor Lin, a longtime patron of the bakery, raised a pair of ceremonial gold scissors. Poppy stood on a small stool, reaching for the ribbon with innocent delight. Nova and Kai flanked Aria, each placing a hand on her shoulder as the mayor counted down. 3, 2, 1. The ribbon fell, and applause swept through the cafe like sunbeams flooding a dark room. Inside, guests sampled elderflower lemon tarts and rosemary apricot scones, their chatter rising in a jubilant tide. Poppy distributed menus she had designed herself, scribbles of pastel flowers around the edges, and darted off to help the barista prepare shimmer rose lattes. Aria wandered the room, greeting each face, soaking in their encouragement. Behind the counter, Kai slid a fresh tray of chocolate espresso macarons toward Aria. Your favorite, he whispered. She raised an eyebrow. Delighted. How did you know? He shrugged, a playful grin tugging his lips. Some things never change.
Aria laughed, accepting a macaron.
Thank you, she said, and in that moment, every memory of past hurts, betrayal, heartbreak, divorce, seemed to dissolve, leaving only clarity and purpose. As the mid-morning sun climbed higher, Aria found a quiet corner and drew a deep breath. The bakery had become more than a business. It was a testament to resilience, compassion, and community. She had faced betrayal, rebuilt her life, raised a daughter alone, and forged connections that transcended old wounds. Each challenge had led her here, to this bright space humming with possibility. Her phone buzzed, a message from Dr. Patel confirming that her latest prenatal checkup was healthy, the baby's heartbeat strong and steady. Aria's fingers trembled as she typed back a grateful emoji, her heart swelling with gratitude for the life growing inside her. Moments later, Nova approached with Mia toddling at her heels. Want to join us in the park after lunch? Nova offered. The cherry blossoms are at their peak. Aria glanced at Poppy, who looked up at her with longing. I'd love that, she replied. I could use a moment of spring air.
Nova nodded.
Eyes warm and unguarded.
I'm glad.
Kai arrived at Aria's side, a quiet presence. He offered her a single blossom from his quince branch, its petals pale and hopeful. Aria accepted it, tucking it behind her ear with a grateful smile. Outside, the cafe spilled onto the sidewalk in a riot of pastel umbrellas and bustling activity. The world felt open, ready for fresh starts. Poppy led the way to the nearby park, where cherry trees formed a fragrant canopy. Nova followed with Mia, laughing as the two children chased after falling petals. Aria lingered a moment to untangle her emotions. Forgiveness had not been easy, but extending compassion had freed her. A new life, both her daughter and the baby on the way, awaited her love and guidance. The bakery's expansion marked not just professional success, but the culmination of her journey from broken trust to unshakable hope.
Kai walked alongside Aria.
Their past neither erased nor forgotten, but integrated into a richer tapestry of possibility. He offered an arm to Aria, which she accepted with calm certainty. They followed the children into the drifting blossom shower, petals swirling like confetti in the gentle breeze. As the branch blossoms rained down, Aria inhaled their sweet fragrance. Each petal that touched her cheek felt like a promise of renewal, of joy, and of the enduring power of compassion. In that moment, she understood that her true masterpiece was not a pastry or a website, but the life she had created, nurtured in the warmth of forgiveness and sustained by the unwavering belief that every new dawn brings hope. And so, beneath the cherry blossoms and glowing with purpose, Aria Lennox stepped boldly into her next chapter, where love, family, and community would forever shape this sweet journey ahead. And that brings us to the end of today's story on TrueStory Vibes. Don't forget to leave a comment with a quote or moment that touched you the most. Your words give our team the motivation to keep creating more heartfelt stories. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you again soon.